Hi, let's get started. It's so good to have lots of people here in person. Isn't that terrific? So thanks very much for coming. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Phillimore. I'm the Executive Director of the John Curtin Institute of Public Policy at Curtin University, based at the Bentley campus. And it's great to welcome you to a Curtin Corner if you've never been to one before. Many of your faces are familiar, but for those of you who have never been to one, thanks for coming for the first time. Of course, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay my respects to traditional owners and their elders past, present and emerging. In case you have not been to a Curtin Corner before, we've been running these events, regular seminars on a Friday afternoon for, well, I've been at Curtin for 18 years and it was already going when I got here, so at least 18, maybe 20 years I think in total. I think our last one in person, our regular in-person ones, was held in this room in March 2020. I remember the very strange experience when I was just getting ready to shake hands, and we said, "Oh, we did the elbow bump," and said, "Isn't this ridiculous? This will never, this won't catch on." And then, of course, we never had an in-person Curtin Corner for about 5 years after that. So we've decided to get back into having them sometimes in person, sometimes online, and there's pros and cons. We do record the talk, so if you do have colleagues who couldn't come today, please make sure you let them know, and it'll be up online soon. Hey Shane, thanks for coming. So yes, as I said, it's a welcome change to have an event actually in person, I think, and we do hold these in-person ones sometimes on the Bentley campus and sometimes in the city, depending a bit on the topic and which crowd we're trying to attract. As I said, you can go to our website and look at lots of talks. Our most recent one was the Ukrainian ambassador to Australia gave a talk, an excellent talk, very disturbing, but a very really great talk. And it's just gone up on our website about 3 days ago. So I recommend you look at that. Of course, if you do come in person, you get the added bonus of having some drinks and nibbles afterwards, which we will do at the end of today's talk. So the format for today is that Jeanette, our speaker, will speak for about 40 minutes. I'll then facilitate Q&A, a question and answer. Please wait, we've got a microphone and we will hand it around. It's a bit clunky, but it just works because when we do the recording, the people who are watching the recording will be able to hear what the question was, as opposed to if it's just your voice, they probably won't be able to hear it quite so well. So please wait for us to give you the microphone, and then we'll hope to finish up around 5:30. And there's seats down here, and then we'll move out into the foyer and have some refreshments and continue the conversation more informally. So I'd now like to formally introduce our speaker, Jeanette Roberts. Jeanette's got more than 45 years international experience, she says, in resources and energy, working across government, industry, academia. She's director of Jeanette Roberts Consulting, where she provides strategic and management consulting services to a broad range of stakeholders and investors in the resources and energy industries. She's worked on major projects all over the world, including in Africa, Europe, the UK and Asia. She lived in South Africa during the first democratic elections there in 1994, I guess that was, and hired her company's first black graduate. She's a fellow of the Faculty of Business and Economics at the University of Melbourne. She lectures, I've just been talking to her there at the UWA Business School on minerals and energy economics, and is a regular commentator on industry issues for the ABC, the Fin Review and others. She's also given at least two previous Curtin Corner presentations. One was on the issue of domestic gas reservation, the DOM gas issue, and the other was on the gas industry more generally. They were both webinars, so we decided this time around that Jeanette deserved to actually speak to people in person for a change and have a bit of a chat afterwards. So we're really pleased that we've got a live audience to listen to Jeanette talking about this topic on lithium. So Jeanette, thank you so much for agreeing to speak today. There's seats down the middle here. It's really lovely to have you here, and we're really looking forward to what you've got to say. So please welcome Jeanette Roberts.
Thank you very much, John. And look, we maybe need more seats. That's fantastic. It's fantastic to see everybody, and welcome on this lovely day to come along to Curtin Corner. Thanks for the lovely welcome, John. It's lovely to be here in person, and I'll have a chance to chat to you after the discussion, so I'm pleased and looking forward to that. As John says, we're going to talk about lithium. It's been very much in the news lately, and it's very significant for the world, but also here, particularly in WA, and we're going to talk about some of those specifics. I was chatting to somebody earlier about other topics in this space. Certainly EVs is a topic in itself, and what policy and subsidies and stuff like that. We're not really going to go down that. But my point is that there's only so much we can talk about in 40 minutes, and there's a lot of things, a lot of other subsets of the discussion that we could enjoy. So I've got quite a lot to get through. As you know, lithium's a lightweight metal used in lithium-ion batteries, and the main issue around that is that they power electric vehicles. So the global need for lithium has increased significantly as electric vehicles become more prevalent in the market. Many of you will know that Australia is the world's largest producer of lithium, followed by Chile, China and Argentina. And most of that lithium is produced here in WA. So it's very significant to WA and Australia in general, and we're significant to the world. Lithium demand continues to increase and expected to double between now and 2030. So if you look at the production, Australia is nearly half of the world production, followed by Chile, China and Argentina. We're a very significant player in lithium production, but we'll look in a minute about the impact of that and the impact of that on whether we should be doing more in terms of processing. It's a bit of a story for WA of digging the stuff out of the ground and then shipping it out the door. Should we be doing more locally in terms of value-adding processing? And certainly a lot of the government policy, particularly at a federal level, is around adding value in Australia and providing more high-skilled jobs. So that's why I entitled the subtitle of this talk is a story of boom and bust, and as we work through it, you'll see why. So what do we use lithium for? We use it as a metal, and it's used in aerospace and batteries, and in order to make alloys. It's used in pharmaceuticals, used in glass and ceramics, high temperature specialist lubricating greases. But the one that's most commonly used and known, and the one that's having a really big impact on the market, is when it's used for batteries, particularly for EVs, electric vehicles. We'll talk around some other details about lithium price further on in the talk, but if you look at that chart, you can see the lithium price since 2020, so that's only a period of 5 years. And part of this story of boom and bust is things are happening really quickly, and they're going up really quickly and they're going down really quickly. And you'll see from that chart, if you look at the scale, that's an 8-to-1 variation in the price over that peak in the middle. And that's a really big difference in any kind of commodity pricing. And you see it in the way people are reacting and the way people are investing in lithium and investing in lithium projects. Because it's really hard to make long-term investments if that's the volatility of your commodity pricing. So globally, we've seen huge volatility in the commodity pricing. Recently, we've seen price falls, as we saw. Primarily, there's a flood of new supply, especially from China. There is thought to be quite a lot of recycling now coming out of China, which is also increasing supply, and recycling in general is a good thing. It is increasing supply and therefore obviously suppressing pricing. So supply, and people here in WA and in general, people have sort of jumped on the lithium bandwagon. They're talking about projects, they're talking about investments. And so the supply has outstripped the demand. And particularly because a lot of this is happening so quickly, there hasn't been, I would argue, there hasn't been time for the market to find its level, and people are making decisions based on the current situation that in a couple of years' time is completely different. But people would argue that the long-term outlook remains strong. Certainly, my premise, and I would argue, is that electric vehicles are here to stay. They've got their market share. Whether that continues to grow or not is, as I say, another new topic. But the long-term outlook for lithium and batteries for electric vehicles is pretty strong, and particularly because those sort of issues are being driven by decarbonisation and carbon abatement and energy transition. So that's a bit of a global overview. We're going to talk a bit more specifically about WA now, and you will notice that there's a lot of commentary about lithium here in WA. And income from lithium royalties, whilst much, much smaller than iron ore, which is a very big number, the lithium royalties are still significant for WA. And in 22-23, the total lithium royalty income to the state exceeded $1 billion, Australian dollars. So that was exciting. Everybody was excited about that, and it was a very big deal. So John did send me the state budget papers. That was a fun experience. And you will see in 22-23, the actual reported in the state budget papers was $1,043,000 Australian dollars in royalty income to the state. So that was big and significant. But then the price crashed, as we saw in that chart earlier. And if you look, this is the current state budget. The lithium royalty income that's predicted for the current year, budgeted for the current year, is $286,000 Australian dollars. Sorry, million, sorry. Silly me. I know, I'm trying to think to put the zeros in my head. 286 million, $286,000, that'd be a big crash. But my point is it's 286 on 1,000 on 286 million on a billion. It's 28.6%, you know, it's a much smaller number. And if you look at the out years, you'll see that it's still expected to be much less than $1 billion. But 28, 29, it's going to be getting on for double what we see now. So I would argue that the state budget is based on some very fine forecasting from some very clever people. I would argue we really don't know. And that's one of the challenges for investors, is that really this is just such a volatile commodity. How on earth do you make an investment decision unless you can be absolutely sure that your project is profitable at the lowest cost base? And not many people can pull that off. So let's talk about lithium mining for a minute. So there's various ways of extracting lithium. The one that's most of what we see in WA is hard rock mining, something we do pretty well in WA. And the mineral that you want is spodumene, that occurs in a crystal form generally, and it's hard rock mining, very much like some of the other mining industry we have. So, you know, it's something that we know how to do and we've been doing for a long time. But there are other ways of producing lithium. One is brine deposits, where you extract it from the lithium in the saline water in these salt lakes, and that's a lot of what's done in South America. There is some controversy around that because of the potential of economic impact, and it's large real estate is required in order to do that. Sedimentary deposits, lithium-rich clays, are not as well developed at the moment. But most of what we're seeing in Australia is hard rock spodumene production. So you can see that this is, I think this is done at Greenbushes actually. You'll see that people can identify the spodumene within the rock and in our crops. As I say, lithium is also produced in brine deposits found in big salt lakes, and that countries in South America like Chile, Argentina and Bolivia do a lot of that. There are some lithium-rich fluids from geothermal sources, and also oil-filled water, which in the oil industry is a nuisance, is postulated that could be used in order to be a source of lithium and could be produced for the lithium rather than just the nuisance value of the water. So this is in South America, and you can see the vast real estate, and there's concern from local communities, particularly some of the indigenous communities, about the impact of that on the local environment. So Australia is the world's largest producer of lithium, and it's also the world's largest producer of lithium from spodumene, from hard rock mining. And currently all the production of all lithium production is in this way, primarily here in WA. However, there's a couple of projects trying to get up. A company called Hydrolit is trying to develop a lithium brine project in the Cooper Basin in South Australia. So that's near where, we'll go back to that in a sec, near where the intersection of South Australia and Queensland, and is very significant because there's a lot of gas production there. Santos are a very big gas producer there. And their project is intended to produce a lithium from the subterranean brine and use what many of us would recognise as oil field technology of a well and producing it to surface. And in the Cooper Basin, that's probably not a bad idea because you've got a lot of gas wells already. You understand you've got the supply chain. That's probably not a bad idea. And one of the other ones that's trying to get up is a company called Direct Lithium that's trying to get a geolithium project in Tasmania, extracting lithium from the geothermal brine. In terms of products, as we said, some of it is produced simply as lithium metal, but the main two products are lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate. And lithium hydroxide demand is expected to grow much faster than the lithium carbonate demand, and we'll talk about the impact of that on WA in a little while. But overall, you can see that the demand forecasts are really strong, and that's what we talked about earlier. This is a very expected. I'm putting kind of a caveat on this. Expectations are this is a very strongly growing market, but we have seen it go bust recently. So in terms of products, we currently don't produce very much lithium carbonate. We do produce a lot of spodumene concentrate. We mine the spodumene and we concentrate it, and some of that gets exported as spodumene concentrate, particularly to China, and some of that gets processed into lithium hydroxide. Some of those projects that are developing, and we'll look at it in more detail later, some of those projects that are currently producing lithium hydroxide are talking about getting into lithium carbonate. But at the moment, it's either the mineral concentrate, or if you're going to process it, you're making it into lithium hydroxide. So that's Madeleine King, the Federal Resources Minister, doing her bit. But Australia has a lot of major lithium projects. Greenbush, and most of them are in the southwest of the goldfields. Greenbushes, which is Australia's oldest and largest lithium mine, and produces spodumene that also goes to the Kwinana refinery. The Mount Catlin is now transitioned to care and maintenance. There's a new one opening in Kathleen Valley, that's probably where that picture is actually, in July 25. An opening in March 24, and Buldania is also seen as highly prospective, and some others. There's a number of speculative listed companies looking at developing lithium projects, and quite a few of them are around that area. And then there's Pilgangoora, which is Pilbara lithium, which is in the Pilbara. So that's the only one not in the goldfields or the southwest. So you'll see, other than Pilgangoora, they're all in this kind of area. So we're going to talk about a few. We're not going to go through all the particular projects. We're going to talk about a few of them specifically. One is Greenbushes, 90k southeast of Bunbury, nice place, where we've been producing lithium since 1983. So it's not new. We've been doing this for a long time. It's probably, I would argue, what is new is the visibility and, of course, the market growth. We've been doing this at Greenbushes since 1983. So it's Australia's longest running lithium producer, and it's an open pit mine. Greenbushes was historically a tin mining area, and so there's a lot of historic mining in the area. The Greenbushes deposit is the highest grade lithium mineral resource in the world. It's a very significant deposit, and it's been producing for a long time. And it's operated by a company called Talison Lithium, which is a joint venture between Tianqi of China and Albemarle of the America. So it's a big open cut mine near Greenbushes. This is the Cooper Lithium project that we talked about earlier, which, as you can see in the little picture on the inset, in the Cooper Basin between NT, Queensland and South Australia, where a company called Hydrolit are trying to produce lithium from the brine deposits, subterranean brine deposits. So their proposal is production via a well, which is very similar to oil and gas technology. Cooper Basin has a lot of gas in particular production, some oil as well. And so there's a lot of knowledge and supply chain there to do it. If we talk about lithium carbonate, there's a company called Gwalia Consolidated that developed a lithium carbonate plant at Greenbushes near where the big plant is. They started up in 1996 and had ongoing technical problems, and some of you might have already heard about this. And by the time they sorted that out, and a lot of plants have challenges when they first start up, but because of the volatility of this commodity, by the time they'd started up, the market price of lithium carbonate had dropped significantly, and there were a lot of new sources, particularly from Chile. So they closed down in '97, a year later. So it really was a bit of a sad, sorry story. They didn't really get anywhere at all. Let's talk about the Kemerton Lithium project. So that's just outside of Bunbury, so also relatively near Greenbushes, but just outside Bunbury. So it's 17k northeast of Bunbury. So it's operated by Albemarle. And remember, they're partners in the Greenbushes mine. They began operations in 22, so they've been going 3 years now. And they're processing spodumene from the Greenbushes mine, where they have an interest, and it's producing lithium hydroxide. And then in the Kwinana Strip, we also have 2 lithium hydroxide plants, again using the spodumene from Greenbushes and other mines around, and producing lithium hydroxide that then gets exported for battery operations. So the one that started up in 2022 is Tianqi, which remember is also a partner in Greenbushes. So that the 2 Greenbushes partners have gone off and also established lithium hydroxide plants. And they were talking about further expansion and second train, but because the lithium price has dropped, they've put that on hold. And the other one is Covalent Lithium, which is primarily Wesfarmers, and that started in July 25. There was a lot of talk about Kwinana being a lithium highway, lithium valley, and more expansion there, but at the moment that doesn't look like going ahead. As I say, Tianqi, we're looking at further expansion, but it doesn't look like it's going ahead for the moment. And that's been the story of this whole industry of people making investment decisions on price assumptions that just don't hold, and the prices, the volatility of the prices. So that's Australia and WA. And then if you're talking about lithium, you've got to talk about China. And you may have read that that's having a big impact. So Australia is the world's largest lithium producer, as China is the world's largest lithium consumer, and primarily for batteries for electric vehicles and consumer electronics and big energy storage systems. So China accounts for 80% of battery electric vehicles, so it's obviously the dominant player in the market, and we will see the impact that has. There's two very large companies, CATL and BYD. You will see the BYD cars around. And the assumption is that China will continue that market dominance position. But Europe and USA are starting to come to the play as well. So if you look at battery manufacturing in China, there's a whole bunch of players all over China. And as I said, they have 80% of the market. So CATL is a very significant player. Contemporary Amperax Technology Limited. It's the world's largest battery manufacturer, and it has 38% global market share for EV batteries. So that's an awful lot to have in the one company. It floated in Shenzhen in 2022 and established a secondary listing in Hong Kong in May of this year. So again, these things are really quite new. That's the initial IPO was only 3 years ago, and the secondary listings this year. But even so, it has an enormous footprint right across China. So if you look at the CATL's footprints right across China, it's really a very big player in terms of production in China, and has a big impact on the global demand. So why is that important? Well, in August of this year, some weeks back, CATL's temporarily halted production at one of its lithium mines, which accounts for a significant percentage of the world's lithium. And so the temporary closure created an immediate impact, an immediate supply disruption, and therefore an immediate impact on the price, and of course on the share prices for people exposed to the lithium industry, producers and other people exposed to the lithium industry. Then, on September the 10th of this year, they announced that the mine that had been closed would resume operation after only just 30 days, and when it was expected to be shut down for 3 months. Coincidentally, I don't really believe in coincidences, new mining regulation came into effect on July 1st of this year in China, and it includes additional license and environmental impact assessments and additional really big overhaul to the legislation that impacts lithium mining operations in China. And the shutdown was associated with not having those licenses in place. 30 days later, they announced that they had managed to get all the licenses renewed in accordance with the new legislation. So we look at the original shutdown was in August, as you see. I haven't got a thing on it, but anyway. In August, as you see, the price went vertically down pretty much. And then in September, when it resumed production, again, you see the impact on the price. So one producer and one mine is so significant in China that it can have that worldwide impact. So, is lithium the saviour for WA? Should we care? Should we do more? Should we do less? Does it really matter? So I would leave you with a few thoughts. We've been in the lithium business for a very long time, and we are a very significant player. But there's been some really spectacular market failures. As I say, a plant that only operated for a year, people not being able to get expansions up. There's been some really big failures. There's also an opportunity for doing more than just shipping spodumene concentrate, and we are trying to do a bit of that with the lithium hydroxide plants, but there's an opportunity for doing more. And I know that there's a cooperative research centre around future battery industries, and lithium is one of the things they're considering. So, whether there's an opportunity for more integrated businesses focusing on other critical minerals as well is a question that we could debate. So that's all I had to talk about. Thank you for your time. And yeah.
We've got plenty of time for questions. Wendy's going to get a microphone for us. I'm just already breaking my first rule, which was I'm meant to be speaking to the microphone while I say this, but you stand there because I'll just wave my hands around. So if anyone's got a question about Jeanette's talk, or also about the broader issues, because Jeanette's got a lot of information and knowledge about other parts of the whole value chain, and also about gas as well, if we really get stuck into it. But let's stick with lithium to start with. So any questions from anybody here? I know we've got some people here from the industry, so also you may have, if you want to just contribute what's going on in the industry, be pleased to hear it. So hands up. Here we go. Here.
So it's something that I follow quite closely, and I noticed quite a sort of tension, I guess, between. It's something that I follow quite closely, and I noticed quite a bit of tension between sort of forecasts of strong demand, as you had on one of your slides, going forward, and then also discussion about whether development of batteries will end up, there's constant development of batteries to using substances other than lithium or using less lithium. So when you say stronger demand for longer, I know it's a little bit hard to predict because, right now lithium-ion batteries are probably the dominant type of batteries, but what are your views on that sort of tension or,
Well,
Just maybe repeat the question a bit, just so people
so the question was, what's the view on long-term demand for lithium and batteries? Is that it?
Is it the only battery type? Only mineral?
Lots of other batteries in development.
Yeah.
Don't use lithium at all, or not as heavily. So
Yeah.
a bit hard to predict, but I just thought I'd ask what your views are.
No, so if we could all predict that accurately, we'd all be making a lot of money on various futures investments. And even the guys who are investing significant money, as you saw, we're having trouble predicting it. So with that as a caveat, I do personally think that the idea that the demand forecasts that say that this market just grows forever and ever and doubles in 5 years and that sort of thing, I think that's overly optimistic. I agree that there's technology development, that there's other players, there's replacement, and there's also been the impact. As I said, we're not going to get too far down the train on electric vehicles, but there's been an impact on the electric vehicle market of people of demand dropping off, particularly when subsidies finish. So yeah, I would agree that there's probably going to be some substitution. I think that the ever-increasing demand forecasts are over-egged, and I probably should have done this as part of this, but it'd be really interesting to do some hindcasting and look at some forecasts versus actual. It's a bit like, the Reserve Bank does all that. It does its forecasts and then somebody does a hindcast of the actuals and it's really rubbish. I think we're probably going to find that.
Thanks. Question that's next.
Just to add to his statement, it was very true about lithium batteries. I think I'm from the copper market, so not lithium that much, but one of our customers as well being EVs. Tesla recently came out and a couple of months ago, or maybe last year, and said we're able to design an EV battery that requires less copper because of the copper shortage if you're unable to secure sufficient supply. And so perhaps just to add to that, if new designs of EVs probably reduce the usage of lithium, I'm hoping that will not impact the market as much as it possibly could. But is there other use cases, would you predict, that lithium could be incorporated apart from EVs that could increase?
Yeah, I agree that there's likely to be battery technology development that results in other commodities having more of an impact on that supply chain. As I say, it'd be interesting to do some hindcasting around this. It would also be interesting to try and look at analogous market development. maybe gold's not a good one, and we've had record gold prices this year. But it would be interesting to also look at a market that was forecasting strong growth that went up and down, what actually happened over a longer period, because a lot of this, as I say, is very, very recent, and we don't really have the history to see. Mm. Can you go?
Do you have any comments on sodium batteries in particular? I mean, I'm not a chemist, but as I understand, you've got lithium as the proton or the carrier that goes through the electrolyte in nearly all of the several common battery chemistries. But sodium batteries are coming in and replacing the lithium as that carrier, if you like, and it's such a easy extracted abundant element. Can you comment on that? Do you know much about the chemistry of them and that? Yeah.
So the question was, what's the impact of substitution with sodium batteries, because arguably sodium is more prevalent. I would argue sodium is more prevalent, but you've still got to extract it, and that still takes energy and cost. I am a chemical engineer, so I can tell you that the idea is an ion across an electrode, and so in principle it works. But it's like every other form of, I'm also an engineer, it's like every other form of technology development, that the practical reality of commercialising a technology that works in physical principle to something that's prevalent right across the globe at scale is a big leap. And I don't know enough about the economics and about the practicality to know how it would compare with lithium batteries in the long term, or even the short term. Can you have the thing again?
On blogs and that, on news clips, and I know that there are sodium batteries being used, and even in cars.
Yeah.
So they've gotten over that hurdle you were talking about of commercialisation.
Yeah. So I look, in principle, those things are certainly possible, but as I say, I don't know how it compares commercially. But you're right; it has certainly achieved some of that. Whether it will ever stack up, it's like any kind of alternative fuel in cars in particular. Do you use diesel? Do you use petrol, or whatever? It's really a question of economics, and if you get into the world of subsidies, sometimes those economics are skewed by subsidies. Not in this particular case. Yeah.
Well, just following up on that point with sodium, I think there was an announcement by China last week about using sodium, and given that lithium seems to have got itself a little bit of a bad reputation in terms of things catching fire regularly, and the news of that, do you see that's going to have an impact on lithium in the medium term? Yeah,
I think it's back to the original question of, do you really believe that the demand forecast will continue to have this exponential growth, or do you believe in general that other technologies will substitute? And will the market of itself be enough to drive that? And will it require, and should it require, intervention in the form of subsidies, if you trump tariffs, Should there be more than just let all that happen? But you'll see that the letting it all that happen is proving quite dramatic and volatile at the moment. Yeah, there was a question at the back.
Right down the back. While we're waiting to get that question down there, can I ask a question first?
Yeah, of course.
Where does is Australia in a good position, West Australia in a good position, if you like? Countries are trying to reduce their dependence upon China.
Yeah.
So are the other EV battery manufacturers trying to basically diversify their source of supply, if you like? So can Australia not just be locked into selling to China, to sell elsewhere?
In principle, yes, definitely. I'm not seeing much active doing of that. And as we know, China's our biggest trading partner. We sell a lot of iron ore to them as well. Daryl Goff went there in whenever it was, 73 or whatever. despite the geopolitical tensions, we're kind of pretty comfortable in exporting from WA to China, and I'm not seeing much activity about breaking that. Anybody aware?
It's interesting that you're the biggest manufacturer or biggest producer here.
Yeah.
Is a joint venture between a Chinese company and a
Well, is
American company. Is that unusual?
No. No. So that's strategic. That's strategic. But should we have and should we continue to let that happen? Is the other point. You get into the world direct foreign investment. As you know, foreign investment has to be approved by the Foreign Investment Review Board, but it's often it's not that often that the Foreign Investment Review Board doesn't approve an investment, although arguably some of them don't get up, like the recent Abu Dhabi takeover of Santos. But so that's obviously strategic from a Chinese point of view. Should we let that happen in Australia, and should we continue to? And the diplomats will say, talking about getting into the defence space, the diplomats will say, well, it's better to have that trading relationship anyway with somebody that you're concerned about strategically. That's why it's called the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Yeah. I don't know. Do people think we should be getting out of that?
Question at the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. My dad was schizophrenic, and back in the day, apparently, lithium was used medicinally.
Oh, yeah.
Can you comment?
Still is. It's used to treat bipolar disorder.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not big volumes, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So lithium is a historic and still current treatment for bipolar disorder, but the amount is tiny, which is probably a good thing.
You don't need volume. You don't need tons of it. But, sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
Thinking about the processing of lithium, how feasible is it to integrate the processing with businesses that focus on making other critical minerals? How feasible is that?
To me, that's sort of the question: is it feasible to integrate with other critical minerals? Certainly, as I say, there's been a cooperative research centre around looking at that and trying to develop some industry and supply chain around that. We could do it with enough will. There'd be various people in the industry who'd say we could do it with enough money, and if you gave us some money, we'd definitely do it. So there's that. We could do it with enough will. You raise a larger issue of how useful it is to have integrated businesses versus pure play. So some businesses are very pure play. Some of the oil and gas businesses, some of the miners are integrated, are broadened across a number of commodities, which sort of makes sense. But when South 32 split off from BHP, they rid themselves of some of the commodities they didn't want to be part of anymore. I do think that of all the broader businesses, consolidated businesses, I think a good exception to the rule of it's better to be focused. I think a good consolidated business is probably Wesfarmers. They do that pretty well, but a lot of people fail in broadening their business base.
I think we had a curtain corner here 6 years ago, about the future battery CRC.
Yeah.
And the CEO of that was actually here, gave a talk about it, very enthusiastic, of course. And I mean, is anyone here from the future battery CRC? Possibly not.
Oh, good.
I'm not quite sure where we're at the moment. It's finished. It's
Yeah,
finished.
I thought it was, yeah.
Concluded. So I'm just not sure. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about to what extent West Australia, as you said, the Lithium Valley idea, the fact that at last we might be able to get some downstream processing, the usual West Australian dream, which has always been, we've always tried for many, many years to do this. So is that now basically dead in the water, or is there some ways in which at least some parts of the processing can be undertaken in WA?
So the principle of the CRC Cooperative Research Centre is that industry stumps up some money, the government gives you some money, primarily Commonwealth, and you put together this research thing. But they're only allowed to go for 10 years, I believe it is. It's a finite. They're only allowed to have a finite life, and the idea is that you then create a self-sustaining business out of what you invested. So I know that the future battery one's finished now. Do you know whether anything's happened? Can you grab that? Yeah.
Sorry, my name is Richard Bergdorf. I'm from Chem Centre. I was one of the project leaders for one of the programs. So it completed in June this year. Sorry, what was the question again?
Has anything?
What's come out of it?
Maybe it's a whole other talk.
Yeah, it's a whole other talk. I mean, there were many programs, many projects within it. So I can't speak for the ones that were directly involved with battery technology, but I think they are continuing at Curtin, in fact. And there are new CRCs being developed, and actually Sophie, our director at Chem Centre, could probably give more information about that. I think it's the critical metals, critical...
Yeah, the critical minerals processing facilities, CRC. Hi, so yeah, Sophie Hancock, so I'm part of Chem Centre as well. So the FBI CRC, I think, has wrapped up. I think that did about 7 years, and then I believe the ongoing initiative is called Powering Australia. So I'm not completely across their program. So I think that's more around creating a strategic pull for things that link to the bigger decarbonising and sort of agendas, sort of federally. And then there are a couple of CRCs that are in different stages. So there's the critical mineral or advanced mineral processing facility. I think it's some combination of those letters. And then there are some others that will have a multi-commodity focus that are going through the CRC funding process at the moment and may come forward. One of them is called the CMCI, so Critical Metals for Critical Industries, CRC, and that one has lithium as a potential commodity within the mix of, I think, about 5. So we're definitely looking at ways through these pop-up organisations or other programs at different scales. So we're part of the state government, but also with research organisations, with industry. So there's different elements of it. There's the technical aspect, there's the pilot projects, facilities that can enable demonstration of new processes, etc. So yeah, it's quite a busy space, I think.
Yeah.
That's what I can offer.
I've got a question for Anand. Anand?
Yeah, no, thanks. I think the last I heard was Amira Global was taking over some of the patents and some of the know-how from FBI CRC. And that's where that know-how was going and trying to develop for the industry and try and build it up from there. That's my thing. But in terms of a question about downstream processing and if you should be doing everything here, it's got to be economically viable and practical. We have started, the first step is the refining projects in Kwinana and Kemerton. That's the first step, and we are still struggling there, and one of the most important things there is skill. I think we need to build, the universities need to build the skill first and know-how. Until that time, so we got another few more years, 5 years, we got to build our skills. That's where we'll become successful. And making batteries in Western Australia, where is the demand? I mean, you could make, say, 1 million cells a day, whereas China, Japan, and Korea make 1 billion cells a day. You can't compete with that. So it's difficult to think of being competitive globally.
Yeah, that's probably, I would agree with that. But then you raise the bigger issue in Australia of, can we compete in manufacturing generally, and should we even try? And is this important? Of course, there's a federal program about that, and it becomes highly politicised because it's people's jobs and things like that. It's a difficult thing, I think.
Just wondering if you'd like to comment on Australia's prospects for secondary processing and any form of processing at all, given the current policy on energy and the transition, that effectively Australian industry won't in any way be able to compete because of the cost of power. And we're seeing that already. The existing manufacturing we've got and the smelters are closing down because of power costs. So unless there's something gives in terms of the way we approach our transition, that the cost of energy is just going to drive us right out of global markets.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. And you see BlueScope making a play for some intervention in the market in the East Coast, in the Eastern Seaboard. You see the reaction to that from the
industry puts up its hands to the government to pay. and say to stop smelters closing by simply subsidising them doesn't seem a recipe for a productive economy.
I would argue that. However, you can't ignore the political reality of manufacturing jobs in particular are very visible. So you can't ignore the political reality of that. And we spent an awful lot of money trying to keep an automotive industry alive in Australia, in South Australia in particular. We spent an awful lot of public money on that. So there is the issue of, and you will have seen in the news this week, some money going into the into Glencore's Mount Isa mines. There's sort of a broader issue of, do you believe in the market economy and just let everybody sort themselves out and then you get the boom and bust like we've seen here? Or do you buy votes, possibly, or do you support industry because it's good for Australia? And as I say, the Feds have got some programs around that. I don't know. And when do you stop? That was the point with the automotive industry. We just kept throwing money at it until eventually we stopped.
I can recommend Jeanette's talk on dom gas last February. You can go onto our website and see her talk about the domestic gas issue, which is often about this issue of, the Dom Gas Alliance wants cheaper gas to promote local manufacturing industry, whereas the gas producers would rather just flog it off overseas. So it was a good talk last February, so check that out. Okay.
So I don't really I'm sorry, that didn't answer your question, because I don't think there is an answer, and I don't think you can ignore the political reality, which is what the politicians play to. But it does worry me when I understand the money going into Mount Isa. It's a community, it's been there for a long time. There's a lot of businesses dependent on that. It's not a good look to decimate that. But the issue of when you stop throwing money at an industry that's no longer competitive is very fraught.
I can't remember whether when the lithium price crashed and the royalties were crashing, did the state government step in at all to try and shore it up? I know it did with nickel. It worked out some way
Not that I'm
try
aware
and
of.
do some sort of. Sorry.
There was a price support scheme with royalties, but prices quickly recovered above that.
Right, just for a little bit. Okay, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I think we might call it a day there, Jeanette. So can everyone please say thanks very much to Jeanette for our talk today.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate.
Thanks for having me.
Look, we'll retire out there in a second to have some drinks and dibbles, and thanks very much again to Sarah and for Wendy for sorting us all out on that front. But just quick two announcements. Outside, Anand from the International Lithium Association has got some various materials outside here on the various magazines and things about the lithium industry. So he says they're free to take, so that's great. And also Kurravilla Matthew from Murdoch University has got some brochures. So I've put some out there. There's a World Renewable Energy Congress here in Perth next February. So REC 2026. I don't know about REC. I'm a bit nervous about REC. WREC sounds like you want to be building things up, not wrecking it. But anyway, the World Renewable Energy Congress is going to be held here in Perth in February next year with various sponsors, including Curtin as well as Murdoch. So our next, we're going to take about, we had, like I said, Curtin Corner a couple of weeks ago today. Our next one's going to be at the end of October with a speaker, Quentin Beresford, former Professor of Political Science here at Edith Cowan, actually, but he's now living in Queensland. He's got a new book coming out on the gambling industry, sort of an expose and critique of the gambling industry. So that will be online because he's in Queensland on the 31st of October. That's our next Curtin Corner, unless I'll get a speaker sometime between now and then, but at the moment, the 31st of October, Quentin Beresford, but that will be online. As I said, you can go back and look at past Curtain Corners on our website. Jeanette's talk on Domgas from last February 2024, and other ones, and I recommend you do that. And if you've got colleagues who weren't able to come to today's talk, please let them know. It takes us about a week to get the talk up on the website. So for now, thanks very much for coming, and I'll see you out there in about 2 minutes. Thanks very much.